Welcome to CrossFit Conversations. Today, we're going to be having a conversation with Nirvana or Vana, host, co owner of the Patriot Games. I wanted to kind of say it like the Hunger Games because, that would have been funny. But just in all seriousness, if you're like Patriot Games, what is that? Is that some sort of like weird thing? Well, kinda. Imagine like CrossFit, a Navy SEAL obstacle course, and like guns, kind of like all jumbled up together. Put it in a pot, put it on low for like 30 seconds, and then serve it when cooled, right? And that's kind of what you get. I'm not gonna do it justice, so I'm gonna let Vanna tell you a little bit more about it. But once again, if you've never been a part of this show, my name is Aaron. This is Costly Conversations, a show where we can talk about whatever. I love the Second Amendment. I love firearms. So this is something that we talk about all the time. And today we have a guest where we can talk about that all day long. I'm excited about it. Let's get into it. Anna, what's going on?
Hey, how are ya?
Hey, good to have you on the show. I know it's taken us forever to figure this thing out, but I'm glad that you're
All
on the show.
done. Likewise, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, well, obviously in the intro, I mentioned that you are the co-owner of the Patriot Games, which is how would you freaking describe that? I tried. I have a hard time. Forgive me. How would you describe it?
It's all good. It is hard to describe because it's pretty unique. I call it like a CrossFit competition and competitive shooting had a baby. So in this phrase, tactical fitness, being able to stress shoot is really the idea behind it. Like, yeah, anybody can shoot pretty dang good when your heart rate is at a nice steady pace. Your hands aren't tired, like you're not shaking. And this type of training and this type of competing really shows you, like, God forbid you're in that situation where your heart is pounding, your adrenaline's going, your normal faculties, fine motor skills are all like going away. Can you hit your target, right? So in our sport, it's different from like ISPS
USPSA.
number. Yeah, yes, it's different from all that because you can't just like let off rounds to hit your target. Every shot counts and you will get time deductions for every miss. So we kind of hold the shooter accountable in that. We do have some stages where we kind of like match that original competitive shooting style. But that's why like a lot of law enforcement are into the sport too, because in the real world your shots count, right? You have your bad guy behind him or to the side, you have an innocent bystander. Can you hit that shot? Can you take that hostage shot? And we emulate a lot of that, a lot of long
Mm.
distance, different types of shooting from different positions, pulling, pushing things. We try to keep things a little more on the functional side of fitness. So we don't
Okay.
do like in CrossFit, you get a lot of fine skills like bar muscle ups and stuff like that. We don't do that. It's moving weird, heavy, odd objects. It's, do you have the stamina to last the course, to move the implements, things like that.
Okay. Now, you have to forgive me if I have or if I do in the future call it the tactical games, just because the names are so close. Patriot Games, tactical. Do you guys ever get confused yourselves, or like, do people come over to you guys being like, "Hey, I'm looking for tactical games type thing"? Like, what is there a difference between those two things? Is it an offshoot? Is it the same thing altogether? What? Tell me, please help me forgive.
So the guy who started the Patriot Games, he came from Tactical Games.
Okay.
Me and my husband bought the company from him. We were competitors with the Patriot Games. It's obviously smaller. Tactical Games is huge. They do a really great job at putting on these competitions. We all have a really good relationship because you're going to find other companies too that put on these type of competitions. The Gamut Challenge is a little more of a long distance. I know they do like a lot of rucking and stuff like that. It's really cool. Proving Grounds is a little more. It's closer to a traditional shooting match, but it has like I'd say they're like 70% shooting, 30% fitness, whereas Patriot Games and Tactical Games are 50-50, pretty much. So we're a little closer to them in terms of like what we actually do, but everyone in that community kind of like shares and participates in each, and I think it's pretty cool because they just get a different experience from each one. So no, never offended by that because it is what it is. It's close in name, close in origin, so it is what it is.
Fair. Now I should let people know because I was looking at the window behind me and there's like a lightning bolt blasting through the sky. Should let people know. Sorry, I think my mic was a little low. There is a thunderstorm going on outside, so if for some reason we lose power, we'll keep recording on this side and we'll put the show out. But I just want to let people know, just in case there's a
Yeah.
disturbance in the force, right? So, guys, thank you so much for watching or listening. So let's dive into the type of people who patronize the Patriot Games. Is it just cops, or is
Yeah.
it like competition guys, or like what? Who are the type of people who are actually into this kind of thing?
Honestly, it's not as many cops as you would think, but the few that it does appeal to, like it, because I'm speaking because I am a cop. A lot of cops don't like to be put up against an accountant and then lose,
Yeah.
and it happens, right? So I think just the American who loves the community aspect of it, because I think that was my favorite thing about being a competitor, being an athlete. Everyone holds you up. There's people competing against you that will cheer you on, give you whatever supplies you're missing. Oh, your rifle went down here, borrow mine. Like that's the type of stuff that our community does for one another.
Mm.
And I really think who we attract are the people looking for that again. They're looking for a village. They're looking for that community of like-minded people because the world you see today, no, a lot of people are very complacent and very
Mm-hmm.
happy being complacent. They don't want to do the hard thing. They don't want to be uncomfortable. And all of these people who compete in these events, they just crave discomfort. And I think it's awesome. And they just kind of gravitate to that. And you see people from all walks of life, stay at home moms, accountants, lawyers, ultra marathon runners, OCR people, people who just do CrossFit, some people who haven't been able to work out in years, but they think it's cool. So they started training just for this. It becomes just a lifestyle, honestly. Like everything they do, they start dry firing more, and you have like this small niche of just heavily competitive, really good civilians that can just pretty much take on anybody in one of these competitions, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is actually really cool. Just the idea that there's people out here who maybe this wasn't their thing and they gave it a shot, and now it's definitely their thing.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty sick. Um, so you mentioned you're a cop, and we kind of talked about this a little bit ahead of time that this is kind of a relatively new thing for you. When did you decide that you wanted to pursue that path? And I know it's not, I guess, stereotypical for ladies first of all to become cops and whatnot, but we can get into all the stereotype stuff later. When did you decide that this is a path you wanted to pursue?
It's competing in the Patriot Games.
Really?
Um, yeah, so it opened my doors and just changed my life entirely. The original owners, Anthony and Allison Tesaro, awesome, amazing people. They're both in law enforcement. And just seeing their view on people and the way they treated others, that was something that I didn't really see too often in the field I wanted to get into. And I'll backtrack into that in a second. But just the kind of love and community that they created, I was like, man, like I know that's not all cops, but that's them, and they're showing me that that's what it can be. And I really gravitated toward them and found myself inspired by them. And lo and behold, they ended up asking us to purchase their company. And that was like an awesome blessing in itself. But I think I'll start with where I was actually supposed to be, or where I thought I was supposed to be. I went to Florida Atlantic University. I got my bachelor's in biology. I was pre med. I wanted to be a doctor. By the time of the end of those 4 years, I was like, I am done with that. I have no interest in going to med school. Maybe I'll become a PA or a nurse practitioner. Reference: I am Indian, like from India, from Asian. Yeah. Um, you have a few options, especially I'm first generation here. My parents were born in the Caribbean. Their parents are from India. I have a couple options: lawyer, doctor, engineer, and you probably hear that all the time. It's just the way it is. Your parents push you towards those higher paying, highly respected fields that are on the safer end. Law enforcement, firefighter, none of those things are ever talked about or even an option to you. So by the time I was done with my 4 years, I, said, okay, I'll try PA, whatever. And at that time, I already started getting into competitive shooting and doing CrossFit. And then I found the Patriot Games, started competing in that. And honestly, after the pandemic and all that, I was just kind of pushed away from medicine and all. And I'm like, damn, I really can't see myself doing that. The way we kind of have no control in healthcare over how we treat people, because there is an agenda, unfortunately, right? Because I heard doctors, I had a doctor in the family who quit because he's like, I can't treat people in a way that's going to help them. I have to treat them based on what's going to pay the hospital. And that didn't sit well with me. And I was actually applying to a program, and they told me, yeah, everything looks great. You're accepted, but you need to get the vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine. Nothing against anybody who does it. I didn't want it. I don't have kids yet. I'd like to. I'm not willing to risk my fertility and even the slightest chance or unknown that it can affect that. I'm not willing to risk that. Being a mother is probably one of the most important things that I hope to achieve in the near future. And I wasn't willing to risk that. And I kind of smiled when she said that. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. And I just walked out of that room. And I called my mom, and I knew this was my chance. This was my chance to get my Indian parents' approval, and they're like, go for what you want to go for, because I mentioned law enforcement to them and got screamed at for a long period of time. You went to school for this. You can't do that. Why would you do that? It's so dangerous. As expected, I called her.
Yeah.
I'm like, Mom, there is no room for me in the medical field. And I explained to her, and she said, okay, go do what you have to do. And I began applying and going through the process. And so far, I am officially a rookie cop off of field training. And it is the best decision I could have made career wise. It's a very rewarding job. Every interaction you have with the community, you kind of decide how that goes. Not always, but for the most part. And I couldn't be happier with it. And again, I'm Indian. I that's not, and race isn't a big thing, but it is in terms of culture, like what we're kind of brought into. And I feel like I kind of opened the door for a lot of people in my family who, my brother wants to be a firefighter. He's so excited. He's like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for firefighter. We have like a 9-year age difference. And my younger cousins, nieces, all of them can look at that and be like, all right, like, she did it, I can do it. I don't have to be a doctor. I can go for something as a first responder. I can try the hard thing like that. So that was cool for me.
That is really awesome to hear you say that it actually opened some opportunity, if you will, for your other family members to not kind of get pigeonholed into you have to get these really great high paying jobs that have a lot of prestige. Like I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome because yes, being first, second, or third generation away from the motherland of India, and then obviously you grew up, your parents grew up on the island, first generation on the mainland, and it's like, okay, there's expectations, and we're gonna at least have a secure future, right?
Yeah.
But you're not that kind of girl. Like you're a risk taker. You're the type of person who's like, let's buy a business that could go under in like 6 months, right? Like that's just the reality. Like, yeah, people want to do it, but they could just as easily go do the tactical games. Like, let's be real. And
Yeah.
also, let's go do a job where I might get shot at. I might have to do the shooting. Like it could get crazy, and I'm down for it. Like I don't like just reality. I don't think I've ever met another Indian girl in the firearm space. Period. So kudos to you for jumping in and doing what you want to do. It's something out of a movie where it's like, Mom, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm gonna chase my dreams, and I love him, you know. But like I'm making a joke, but it's so real and it's inspiring because there's a lot of people who are afraid of their parents. especially Caribbean parents, especially, Asian parents and whatnot. And it's like, man, she really did it. She really did it.
There's such fans about it and so supportive about it now. And my mom even says, she goes, I couldn't see you doing anything else. She was like, you love it. You love that. She was like, and as much as I want to be worried about you, no, you're fine. I know you're fine.
Yeah. So I don't want to spend the entire time talking about, oh, how being a brown girl is just so hard and now you're a cop, but it's just really cool. I just want to just take a moment and appreciate that you kind of forged your own path and did something way different. And like we said earlier, open the door for other family members to do different stuff. Oh, firefighter's a great job. Why not do it? It's dangerous, but it's good. So,
Exactly.
man, what when you said you're a rookie now, I'm like, ooh, secret. How do you say? Guilty pleasure. I really enjoyed watching The Rookie, like seasons 1 through. Are we on season 4 now? Did you ever watch that
I don't
show?
know.
It's on ABC. You didn't
People
watch
keep
it?
telling me to watch it and let them know. I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched. Believe it or not, like the only cop shows I ever really watched were CSI Miami. I was a big fan of her Kane, but
Yeah.
like the true crimes and stuff like that. But I need to watch it because people are asking me, is it accurate? Is it like a real experience, or are they BSing me? Like,
Yeah. I mean, TV's always got some moments where it's like, oh yeah, that's good, or like as much as they've been doing this for a while, why is she gripping it like the handgun? Why is she holding the handgun with her hand on the gun and the support hand under the gun in the teacup position, and it makes you want to vomit? You're like, how dare you? You guys have all the money in the world to call somebody in, an amateur shooter, to tell you, hey, this is how you hold a gun.
Yeah, to not look stupid.
To not look stupid and take people like me out of it.
Yeah.
It's the problem, kids. Don't go down this path of being interested in firearms and actually pursuing an education and actually gaining skills, because it'll ruin movies and TV for you.
It really does. Like, that's why, like, people don't understand the, like, fixation on John Wick who aren't in the gun community.
Right.
But it's there was so much effort put into it. Guns are not something to be taken lightly, and everyone else feels like it just can be a movie prop. Hello, Alec Baldwin killed somebody because of just gross negligence on his part. Entire crew on not learning how to be safe with a gun, how to properly operate it, how to check if it's clear, how to do any of that, and easily avoidable situation.
Yeah. So. Now, funny that you say that. Where are you based out of? What state?
South Florida.
South Florida. Which people say Florida is like no other state, and Miami is not Florida. Miami is Miami. Now, are you in Miami? Or are you like more like Naples, or where in the whole South Florida?
Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. Yes. Last time I went on a cruise, we had to go out of Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if you get a lot of cruise people, but
yeah. No, I live pretty west from there. Like I live in like a smaller suburb outside of the city. So
okay. Good job not doxing yourself, telling everybody exactly where you live. No, this is my address.
Actually, let me pull up a map.
Let's just pull it up on Google Maps right now, guys.
And here, just find it and see.
So, what was I going to say? Oh, I lost it. Yes, Alec Baldwin. So, unpopular opinion. I don't think Alec did anything wrong on that day, but everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
Literally everybody else did. And apparently there were complaints on the on that set before, like, hey, this was we feel unsafe about this, we feel unsafe about that. People taking the guns and playing with them, like actually like firing live rounds through them during off hours. Now people will challenge me on this and whatnot, but unfortunately movie sets are extremely different than real life. So the expectations in the chain of command is what it is, where it's like, okay, armorer checks the gun, hands it to, is it first AC or the assistant director, whoever checks the gun. Okay, Alec, do not alter this gun in any way. You just do exactly what we tell you to do. You had 2 checks. And if you start changing things and checking things, now it's liability. Now it's insurance. Oh, well, your actor is playing with the gun outside of what is actually instructed. And so that's a thought process that some people have come up with. And I was like, I kind of tend to agree. Like,
I can see that. I can understand that actually.
yeah. And so, I mean, I'm not a fan of Alec Baldwin. I think he's kind of a menace. But was he liable for slaying his cinematographer? I don't think it was him specifically. I think it was everybody else who touched the gun. And then, as is the standard operating procedure on a movie set. Let's read the SOP and find out, right? Um, but I know you're not here to argue back and forth with me on, hey, Alec Baldwin's a scumbag, and
No, you made it good. You could be a scumbag and not wrong at the same time, or not
right,
having blame on you, right?
right, because even a broken clock is right twice a day. So, yeah,
Exactly. So that's fine. I can actually see your point on that, and it does make sense. Like there are other people entrusted to make sure of that. Should they have done something else, had a higher responsibility in terms of
mm-hmm,
educating their staff? Absolutely, but they didn't, and they
mm-hmm,
put their hands and their trust in these people in charge of
right,
that. So
right,
that is a good point.
right, and so I just find it fast, and I've been wanting to get some sort of actual like movie set armor on the show, or somebody who's familiar with actually guns on the movie set on the show, just to kind of talk about this because it's so like these things, as much as they're auxiliary or seemingly unimportant because it's not our world, the understanding of what firearm safety actually is, and how it can be different for certain people, but it ultimately does kind of all lead to the same events. Like if there's a bullet in the chamber, there's a bullet in the chamber. I actually just watched a video of a guy. He was on a firing line, sitting down, had a 1911 in hand, took the magazine out, placed it on the tray on the firing line, went and racked it once, racked it twice, racked it three times. I don't know if he was unable to fully rack it. Brought it down to his feet, tried to rack it again, and then somehow actuated the trigger, and blew a hole in his foot. And you see his foot leaking, leaking that dark crimson uh, human
Nice
goo.
blood.
Yeah, that's blood. That's blood. And
Ugh.
guess what, buddy? Like you have a few minutes to get this thing right, and the reality is, however you feel about him, right? However you feel about um, that guy, he made a mistake. He's never going to
Yeah.
make it again, I don't think. But how often at what level, and let's bring it back to Patriot Games, at what level are your participants trained and have an understanding of how to operate firearms? Are you guys kind of entrusting, like, hey, we're going to do the safety briefing and please don't violate it, or we're going to have to send you home? Like, how does that work?
So I feel like in order to the barrier to entry in terms of the amount of gear you need to accumulate, you're practicing. And if we see anything unsafe, like that's all right. You're done. Pack it up. Go home. We're done. We can't give no quarter on that. Like that's safety violations in that because like I said, like you're without normal faculties by the time we're done running you through things. A lot of times, last thing I need you to do is be muzzling anybody, breaking your 180. I don't have. I need you if you can remember anything when you're tired like that. It's not to risk the life of anybody around you or your own. And that's just something we can't play lightly, tread lightly with because that's that. We like I said, we assume that you've done your training. We have you sign a waiver. And again, the amount of hundreds of dollars that you need to accumulate in gear, I'd hope you spend some of that on some training. We do offer like training boot camps kind of thing where we kind of put people through that feeling, and if you need some fine tuning on your shooting, we can fix that up too. But no, in no way can you even like you need to know basic safety. I can work with someone who can't hit the broadside of a barn all day. That's fine. I can teach you that. But I need you to understand the concept of muzzle awareness and trigger discipline. That is my bare minimum criteria before you walk into one of my training days. You need to understand that. And if you're not there yet, we can have like a one-on-one conversation. I'm not even gonna charge you for that. Like that's like here, let's talk because I want people to be safe with guns overall. Like if someone were to tell me, hey, my grandma wants to have a gun, all right, tell grandma call me. Let me meet grandma somewhere. Let me do a Zoom meeting with you and have grandma there. I think that is just something that we need to be more open about as Americans. And I'm sorry to like go off topic a little bit, but we have guns. They're everywhere. It's the Second Amendment. Why is gun safety not something being taught? How many kids come in contact with a gun and shoot themselves in the head because they don't know what to do with it, right? And there's the opposite argument. Oh, maybe they'll do this. Okay, but maybe they won't. Maybe now they'll come. We've tried ignoring it, making it taboo, and we have kids blowing their heads off because they came in contact with something they shouldn't have, because they shouldn't have, and kids are going to touch things they shouldn't touch. So that's my basic need is I need you to be safe, and I hope the hundreds of dollars you spent, some of it was spent on some training as well.
Holy smokes. That was
I
preach, man. Preach. I actually had a guy, and bless his heart, he's a good dude, an instructor, really he means well, but I was like, hey, I think we should like teach kids about basic gun safety in school. And maybe you're not there quite yet, but I'm like, I think we should teach this stuff in school. Like, we have so many guns in America. I saw guns for the first time when I was in junior high. Like, junior high, another student had one, and he was in his truck, and he kind of showed it to me, and I was like, what is that? Like, he wasn't showing me to like, hey man, check it out, but like he was like trying to intimidate me a little bit, and I was like, is that a gun? Huh. Yeah, I got bullied in junior high.
if you didn't get in junior high, and I'm gonna say it, you probably suck now.
Because you peaked in high school, and that's it.
Junior high.
My goodness. Peaked in junior high. No, captain of your junior wrestling team. That was it.
You're the winner of middle school. Congratulations. The rest of us were ugly and weird and got to come into our own into adulthood. Screw you guys.
Dang. Listen,
I too was in middle school.
no, like we're vibing on that. Like I get it. I rock with you 100%. So here's the crazy thing is, like, this kid did a lot of wild stuff. Like, he made me and one of my best friends fight. That did not go well for me. He at some point he took a knife and like poked it into my side and was like I guess trying to get me to do something. Nothing like insane, right? But that in itself is insane. It's like, man, looking back, I'm like, my life was in danger. I'm so glad I made it out. The devil was trying to take me out, like, what the heck? But here's the thing, and that's part of the reason why I'm so big on like, hey, self-defense, stand up for yourself, like get the tools necessary to defend yourself, because like there are like, just because we're not in junior high and high school anymore, like there's still bullies out there. There's still people who will take you out just because they initiated contact and you try to respond, and now they feel threatened, so they're going to escalate higher. Now, do you have the tools and the skills and the knowledge and even the spiritual fitness to be able to stand tall and take out the threat or neutralize the threat or stop the threat, whatever you want to say? Because we don't say kill the threat. That's not appropriate. I've heard other instructors say that. We don't. That's not.
Stop.
Your lawyer's gonna get you. Don't do that. But we can
never
stop
say it.
Oh my gosh, that bothered me so much.
That line, shoot to kill. I'm like,
oh my god.
that out loud ever again.
So statistically, they say that cops, I guess, like, there's a large percentage, you can tell me the statistic if you know it, large percentage of cops will never use their firearm in the line of duty. Do you know that stat?
I don't know the stat, but I do know as many cops, there were as many officer responsible deaths, like the cops took the lives of as many people of like coconuts last year. Coconuts took the same amount. So people have asked, they're like, oh man, have you shot anybody? Like, whoa, that's not a normal occurrence. Like, that's not something that happens.
Right. Like, I assume no. Though I know probably too many cops, because I know a few who have. I'm like, why do I know so many who have? And part of that is, hey, location, their personal track record, because some cops, and you don't have to respond to this because I know there's like a code or whatever, but you can. where some cops are more prone to escalating situations just because
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of in their makeup, and others
There
are more prone to de-escalate. How do you feel
definitely
about that?
there could be that sometimes. There could be just the kind of policing you do.
Hmm.
If you're proactive and you're putting yourselves in situations where you're going after bad guys, more often than the cop that's sitting under a tree, which that serves its purpose too. I'm sure. I'm not knocking that. Just putting that out there. But if you're out there, you're chasing bad guys. More than likely, you're going after felons with firearms. More than likely, you have a higher probability of something happening where you do have to use your firearm. So it could be, yeah, you're not good at de-escalating and you're a shit stirrer, or that you're going after bad guys. So it could be that. I just think really it really comes down to like where the planets are aligned that day and what's hitting the fan, because it's
No.
really it'll be calls where you don't, from what I've seen, it'll be calls where they didn't really ever expect that to happen like that,
Hmm.
and it was a trespassing call, and it's just a
Yeah.
hey, get out of here, dude. Guns pulled, knives pulled, whatever it may be.
Right.
So yeah, that's my take on that. I don't like one thing a lot of cops abide by that I've learned. They don't like to like Monday morning quarterback one another and like, oh, what you could have done different, how you could have handled that situation differently. I really just think at this point it comes down to like the luck of the draw.
Hmm.
A little bit.
Yeah, there's a bit of luck that comes into it, and then you do see other situations like the Lakewood shooting, where Pastor Joel Osteen, however you feel about him, I think he's kind of a kook, down in his big old mega church down in mega church. I mean, the funny thing about mega church is 800 attendees a week, mega church.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, really?
Yeah.
Well, we have 3 services. And it's like 250 in each service. Oh, mega church. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of people, I guess. Anyways, so Pastor Joel Osteen in his church, Lakewood, they had an incident, and on duty there was a bunch of cops. There was actually a significant number of cops located inside the church. Um, some had to respond after the fact. Some were kind of floating around doing, I forget the term for it, when you're not on duty but you're picking up some
You're
OT. Pardon?
you're a detail.
You're a detail, or whatever term is used locally for that church. And it was interesting to review the footage, to have it reviewed by other people who have done the job, not just by my team and what we do, because I'm in private security, so we have to look at it kind of objectively as well. And it was interesting to see the mistakes that were made. And it's like, man, the truth of the matter is, you could potentially be in a situation and you're walking towards the gunfire, and all of a sudden your feet start to freeze up and your brain starts to play tricks on you, and you start hearing things here and there, and you're like, ooh, maybe we should try to outsmart this guy, and maybe we'll go around, because that's two of the ladies who were responding, um, two female cops. They were like, ooh, let's try to go up the stairs and go around, and it's like, that didn't work. The door was locked. Okay, well, I guess we have to kind of march straight towards the bullets again, and no one wants to do that. Like, no one in their right mind wants to march towards the sound of gunfire. Like, if you're at the range and you hear it ricochet, like, you start thinking twice about, man, maybe I should go home. So, like, I do
Yeah.
not envy anybody who is in a violent interaction and has to kind of, you know, nut up and take charge and actually go towards the sound of gunfire, to, lack of better terms, right? To meet
With
that
greater
violence
violence.
with violence, or greater violence, as you just said. But on the other side, it's like, man, like, there was one cop, Hispanic dude, and as soon as the gunfire, first of all, he was on his phone, right? Because we're all on our phones sometimes. And the lady walks right past him, trench coat and all, and then she starts shooting, and he ducks right into the closet behind him. It's like, oh, that's bad. And it was especially bad when you noticed in the footage that, at one point she actually puts the rifle down, and because he's ducked in the closet and can't see anything, She's literally has the rifle on the floor, is unarmed at this point, more or less, and is screaming and hollering, and like he had a shot. He had a
Yeah,
shot. And
absolutely.
obviously, like you said, Monday morning quarterback, like what's the point? But how do, can you, Vanna, can you look at that footage, or can you look at these circumstances and be like, okay, this is possible. I thought we would all do the right thing, but clearly it's possible for us not to. Now I have to try extra hard to do it. Or how do you process it? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I think that, like, yeah, money winning quarterback's one thing, but also you just can learn from it. Learn from it, and maybe even have a come to Jesus moment with yourself. What I, one thing like my department's taught is, and even when I was in the academy, you hear gunfire, you run straight to it. There is no, there's no running around. There's no, okay, let me try and outsmart anything. No, there's active stimulus. There's something happening. Go to it. And if you think you can't do that for a second, resign. That's the day you earn your paycheck. Plenty of days you're not facing anything like that. Most of your career, you may go your entire career not facing anything like that. But the day it happens, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself. When I was in the academy before we graduated, they like nailed this into us. They're like, if you think for a minute you hear gunfire and you're going to run the other way, quit now. Because it's not going to be an easy life after that. You're not going to live with yourself well after that. And no one's going to let you be at peace for that. This job, you need to be treat everybody with respect, but you need to be able to meet violence with violence or greater violence. And that's not something you can teach. That's not something you can train. That's a willpower and a fortitude that you don't even know if you have till the moment actually comes. Because we all think we can do it. It's just when the moment comes, what will you do? Right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I
There's a I'm a big Star Wars fan. You ever watch Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Yeah. So in the commercials or the trailers for Rogue one of the better Star Wars installments, there was I guess there was some dialogue that never made the final cut. And we have Forrest Whitaker talking to the main character, Jen Orso. And he's all like, what will you become? You know? And that's when you're talking, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, dang, like there's a moment you have an opportunity, right? And not everybody has an opportunity to encounter violence. And I don't think that's something that's actually desirable for most people. In fact, if you wake up one morning and you're like, man, I want to get into a gunfight, you should probably go see a therapist, because
Yeah.
that's not, it's not healthy, man. Like you
No.
want to die? Like, okay. But for me, just to kind of, I guess, shift gears ever so slightly, when I wake up, when it's time to go on duty, and I strap my gun on, and I, tighten up my belt, and I, do all the things, and I, you know, put my TQ in my pocket, and all the little things that you're supposed to do to kind of get ready for the day, your ritual. I have to tell myself, like, okay, if violence comes today, and it could come today, like, we're gonna do the right thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And I don't want to die, but it could happen, and I got to be okay with that. So it's just weird little stuff. Do you find yourself having
Yeah.
personal, intimate conversations like
Yeah.
that when
It's
it's time
like
to go to
that's
work?
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before, one thing we were taught was like, before you go to a call, just plan out all the ways it can go wrong, and,
Mm-hmm.
or try to, and get there, and everything goes great, great. But you had a mental rep of it going wrong,
Yeah.
and it's hard to, when you're blindsided by something you didn't expect it to go wrong. Shit, you caught me with nothing. Wasn't prepared for it to go like this, but it kind of played
Flat
out.
footed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I find that to be fascinating. Just the idea of have a plan, right? Um, I see a lot of, like, if you ever watch like active self protection or anything like that, if you're in the self defense space at all, he's been a staple in the Monday morning quarterbacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's something I've noticed. There's a lot of people who actually have some sort of self defense tool in their home, whether it's a firearm, whether it's a kitchen knife or something like that. And There's some people who choose not to engage with firearms, right? And that's their prerogative. I wish you would, but if you feel you're unable to do that safely and effectively, understood. I'm not going to bully you into getting a gun. That
Yeah,
said,
rather you not have it.
that
If you're not going to practice with it, it's a paperweight.
right, it is a paperweight, and there's this idea, and there's something that I like to tell people, especially people who are like, "Hell yeah, I have a gun, but it's in a safe in my room at the back of the house." Okay, cool. If that's the case, fine. That's not ideal. In fact, that's not even a good idea. But have a plan. Like understand, like, okay, if somebody starts to literally kick in your door, if you hear loud thunderclaps at the front at your front door, where are you gonna go? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna address the door? Are you gonna yell and scream? Are you gonna hide behind your couch? Or are you gonna move towards your firearm? Like, what's your plan? Like, what's your plan of action? And if you've never envisioned yourself doing it, and maybe even actually having done a dry run or a cold run, then what makes you think that you'll be able to navigate the maze that is our homes in order to get to a device that's locked behind a code and a steel wall or whatever it is safes are made of these days, to get the firearm, to make sure it's loaded, and hopefully it's stored in such a way that you understand, and then effectively engage um, an offender with the deadly force that is required should it be a deadly force encounter. You know, I said a lot, but I hope that I'm like walking everyone through. I mean, obviously, do you find yourself in that situation? Like you just said, like, hey, when I'm going to a call, I'm doing what they told me to do. I'm walking myself through all the different ways it could go wrong. Okay, if she starts shooting, well, then what am I going to do? Okay, if he pulls out a knife, well, what am I going to do? But for you, and I guess you're in your mundane home life, do you have like a thought process of like, oh, this is how I respond?
Yeah, I have the playful thought process, and then I have the serious one. The playful side of me tells Alexa lights out, and playful she hits something. And
Stop! No, you're my best friend. Okay, that's it.
but then on the real, my the first to the door will probably be my dog. I have a Belgian Malinois. Her name's Rogue. She will probably be first to the door, and mom and dad will be following right behind her. We keep we don't have kids yet. We keep rifles right by his bedside and pistols on my side, and we're ready to go. We train so often together. We've done like team competitions together. We can move pretty well in a unit and understand like where one another's at. We have like that nonverbal communication that you can do without even looking at each other, kind of thing, like a wink,
Mm-hmm.
like a nudge and a point, kind of thing. So it's pretty good, especially in terms of like keeping our house safe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're actually we'll be moving soon, a little more north, not too far. So it's just kind of like learning the layout of that house, and there's a lot more points of entry.
Careful.
So
Somebody's going to hear you say that, and they're going to know exactly where you're moving just based on the leaves at your feet, right?
a little more, a little more.
Just a little bit more north. Okay, yeah, I know exactly where she's moving.
Like, all right, I know she lives like in a small suburb outside of like yeah.
I don't know, man. Some people have like a superpower where they can identify your home by the stone, by the tree. Like, I've seen that before in a dream.
Yeah.
Come on, dude, chill out. So you guys are moving, and you're thinking of cooking up a new home defense plan.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Just like, and I know some people will say it's like paranoid or whatever you think. It's not paranoid. It is human nature. I don't know why people like to pretend that humans are these like highly evolved creatures that don't crave to do bad things or violence or anything like that. Um, in my new career, I'm seeing how often it does happen. Humans act very selfishly a lot of times without
Mm-hmm.
worrying about the consequence of other people. You have something they want it. You can't. Some people have no inhibition. That voice that says, "Hey, don't do it," they don't have it. They don't hear it. And man, the amount of drugs flying around
Mm-hmm.
and high level of drugs, you got something higher than crackheads floating around. Like these are actual zombies, and
Have you
it's
run into those PCP heads before?
yeah yeah. I think the biggest thing right now is like fentanyl. Everything has
Yeah.
fentanyl. So even like your
What are
average,
these? What are those? What are the people who are on fent? Like, how are they responding and reacting? Is it different or?
you just get like a lot more overdoses happening, but
Yeah.
really their tolerance. So if you've like built up like an opioid tolerance, like it does take a lot more, and that's why the people who use fentanyl often aren't dying right away. It's the people who are like their recreational cocaine user who didn't realize they just bought fentanyl kind of thing. They can't be like
Right.
scream. Like those are the people who are gonna be like knocked out by it. Like, all right, I'm done. Slow respiratory, I can't breathe. All that's happening.
Yeah.
And then like the people who are like fried entirely and like their brains are just saturated in opioids at all times. And yeah, man, it's just it's crazy. I don't think they're like there's a situation with like Flocka and all that stuff going on down here. They get super strength. I haven't dealt with anybody like in excited delirium yet, knock on wood. But
The absolute panic in your face when you said that. I was like, never.
videos of that.
Bro, I've seen some stuff. We've watched, when I was in training, we watched a lot of cop responses. And there was one guy who he backed up probably like 200 yards with a guy just shirtless with a knife. It was just hulking him down. And cop shot him a couple times and it did not matter. He still got stabbed.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
so people can call you paranoid all they want, but when something happens to them, like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened to me. Why can't you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, I'm so serious, bro. Like, here's I had a oh man, about a year ago, I had a friend who was jogging or walking around in her old neighborhood, and she lived next to a school. Somebody's going to know exactly where I'm talking about, just because they're crazy like that. But she she was walking or jogging around a school near where she lived, and then all of a sudden, there's this guy in a pickup truck, kind of drives up next to her. He's like, "Hey, I've got some puppies. You want to check out my puppies?" And she was like, "No, I'm good." Kind of kept walking, right? And he kept following her in the truck and pursuing her, and she kind of took off, and he kept pursuing her, and on only until because we're at a school, right? There was like a cluster of like high school jock athlete types, and she kind of ran towards them, and then he turns around and heads back the other way. They contact her and her husband contacted the police, and they were like, actually, this has been a method that we've been seeing recently. And guess what they did not 3 weeks later? Bought their first handgun. They didn't buy the one I suggested, but they got something, right? And now, yeah, I see these like canon events. If you ever watched Into the Spider Verse or Across the Spider Verse, you see these like canon events where it's like, hey, this is what kind of set Peter Parker or Miles Morales into their journey as Spider-Man. Uncle dies, or this die, this happens, or this spider, and I see these people who is like, hey, these things happen, and all of a sudden I'm a gun owner now. Like, I think this is the most important thing I can do for myself. This is self care. Of all the people who get obsessed about that term, this is that, right? Um, but you have to take that momentum and actually volley it or send it into the next phase, which is I'll actually book that class. I'm actually
yeah,
gonna spend the $500 and buy a decent gun, or I guess $650 now plus tax.
yeah.
What was your?
It's funny in that. Okay, you're asking me what my moment was that kind of set all that into motion. I started thinking about it immediately as you were talking about that because it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
So and again, we all need that moment that sends us there. So I was on my way to FAU from my boyfriend's house, who is now my husband. Um, love my life, love him, he's amazing, and business partner. Um, but anyways, I had stopped to put gas, and I noticed a car. I was always one thing I've always paid attention. I always pay attention, and that's something people need to be more aware of. But I'm here putting gas. I see a car pulling aggressively, and then another van pulling behind them. I see two females in the first car. One steps out immediately, starts coming towards me with a book. She's like, "Hey, hey, do you want to hear the words of our Lord and Savior?" And starts opening the book and like really coming at me. And I was like, usually I take Bibles or anything like that. I mean, I'm Hindu, but I respect all religions, and if anybody wants to preach the word of God, I'm willing to listen. Right? I embrace that. But I couldn't. Something wouldn't let me. And I'm like, no. And I just take the pump out and I get in my car quickly. As I did that and started pulling out, I noticed her get in her car and both of the cars whip out and go in opposite directions together. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? So later that night, I get home and I'm scrolling through Twitter, had a Twitter at the time, and they're on that, they mentioned that gas station and they're like, hey, everyone beware. There's a lady driving her car, the car that she gets out of, and another car coming. They have some type of like sedative that they kind of like drug you and you faint, whatever. They act like they're going to give you a Bible, and then they make you pass out, and then they throw you in that other van. Two people have already, it's almost already happened to, and I'm just like, what the hell? Like, oh my God. Like, I could have been abducted or close to. It was early in the morning, the dark early of the morning, and that could have that could have happened to me. So after that, I went and I got my concealed carry permit, and I got a gun, and I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to not feel like that, and I was also a bartender, and I walk around with cash. I worked late, so I hated that feeling of like, man, if something happens right now, what am I going to do? Nothing. I'm going to get robbed or kidnapped or God knows what else. So all those things kind of accumulated for me, but that was definitely my moment where I was like, no, this is not a game anymore. Like, I need to take this seriously. And from there, I just kind of became obsessed with being an asset with my firearm. And it's just the ultimate equalizer. I think like that's like the greatest right a woman can have and exercise, because 9mm, 9mm, no matter who's shooting it, there ain't no size difference at that point. And the vulnerability you feel as a woman walking in the dark at night is unmatched. But once I got good with my firearm, I didn't feel that no more. So much so, I'm in law enforcement now, and I can walk in a dark alley, feel pretty okay. Not just because of my firearm, because there are other extents to it, like you said. Your gun shouldn't be your only answer. And I've trained in that as well. Not as much as I should. I definitely want to get into that more. But yeah, that was my moment, and that's when I realized.
Yeah. Man, that is awesome. Just obviously terrible to know that there's this duo going around or some team abducting people around that time, and hopefully they were completely busted in, ring taken out, all that stuff. But to have that moment where you said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to stop, how do you say, outsourcing my self-defense,
Yeah.
outsourcing my safety, outsourcing my personal safety. I'm going to take responsibility for that. I'm going to get some training, get tools that are necessary for self defense in today's modern era. Like, unfortunately, a strong word in pepper spray isn't quite enough, although there's people who do it. I say if you're going to do pepper spray, get you some bear spray while you're at it, just because it's nasty stuff. But um, there have been so many crazy incidents of people being abducted, people having a chance to fight back but not being able to, people, like we talked about before, running into the scenario where it's like, okay, opportunity to fight back, but they've never really thought through what to do. So they're caught flat footed. It's kind of a athletic term. Um, when now they're falling backwards, and now they're being drug off or beaten up or harmed or, violated in some way. And to decide, like, that's not going to be me. Like, I understand that that's a lot of people's situation, but it's not going to be me. Like, that's powerful. And I think more women, especially like you said, that's like the ultimate right for a woman, is to be able to own your own self defense, not to rely on some guy. I mean, obviously, you have an awesome husband who has trained with you and has, together, you guys have empowered each other and yourselves to become powerful in that way. But to be able to say, like, this is my moment. This is something that I own, regardless of if I'm by myself, if I'm walking down a dark alley. Obviously, don't put yourself in a dumb situation, right?
Yeah, don't do anything stupid for no reason.
Right. Like, people say, like, if I have to take my gun to this party, I'm not going to this party, But
Yeah.
to know that no matter what comes around the corner, I have answers for it, whether it's a deadly force question or whether it's I'm going to be wise and walk the other way question. Like there's a million ways to handle situations, but it's beautiful that you've kind of owned that, right? Man, man.
It I think like so you'll hear women say a strong independent woman who don't need no man, this, that, and the other. Yeah, that's great. Can you protect yourself? You got a job and a college degree. Can you protect yourself? What about that part?
Ooh.
You nailed it all on the money part. Who cares about that? Money means nothing if you're dead. I don't know if you know who John Lavelle is.
Yeah, I've met him.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, he's amazing. He made a post talking about polite women are dead women.
Ooh.
Thought that was so deep, and I loved it, and I thrive on it because, like I said, I was a bartender. I was not, and I worked for Twin Peaks. That's not a
Mm-hmm.
secret. Like, you'll see that anywhere. And obviously, that's a place where you kind of make really easy money, have guys flirting, like, or trying to do whatever they do. I was never a flirty bartender. I was mean. It was funny. It was like my joke. I'm not a mean person. It was just my joke. And I did that for a reason because I know that predators don't like resistance. They
Mm.
don't like being met with something that they know, like, that's all right, that is too hard of a target. There are easier targets out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the reason I always led, and I had many loyal regulars. I was a bartender for 8 years. I've had them for 8 years. They'd come, have
Dang.
lunch, whatever. Good friends, gave me wedding gifts, like, met my husband, like, cool guys. And I was able to weed them out. People ask me, how do you not have creepy, like, regulars that are, like, obsessed with you and weird and treat you like a human? Like, because I'm mean. I'm mean. The only men who are going to stick around are the ones who don't have those predatory intentions.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you cannot give predators what they want. They want that smile and to be called sweetie and honey. No. What are you drinking? Oh, you said something weird. Okay, you're going to get the hell out now. I'm not even giving that the slightest inch of anything. Make fun of them. Hurt them a little bit. You got to hurt them a little bit. Just a little.
Ooh.
And it sounds awful. Hurt their
I
feelings.
mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but I think you're making a point because I mean I'm a guy. I've been around guys who don't have the best self control,
Mhm.
to say the least, right? And to kind of envision that situation where it's like, oh, the them trying to be slick and feel like, oh, maybe if I smile big and she smiles back, oh, maybe I have a chance. So you're telling me I have a chance, and maybe it's not even super malicious. Like they're not gonna try to kidnap you on the way to your car, but maybe they'll try to talk to you at your car and make you feel uncomfortable and not take a hint, right? And so you're saying like in those situations to apply a certain amount of pressure to present a certain amount of strength, which you call it meanness, and some people would say like, no, I'm just being kind of strict with how I present myself.
Yeah.
It's a
And
thought. It's a thought. It's a philosophy. And somebody's going to
Mhm.
say it's wrong, but you felt it worked for you, and you stayed in the business for 8 years. That requires great customer service. So,
Yeah. So it works that I never had a bad review on my personality either. But yeah, I have a lot of friends and a lot of little girls in my family, and they tell me, man, my daughter's got an attitude like you can't believe. I'm like, keep that.
mm-hmm.
You keep that in her. Do never, don't let her fire, because the only man worth her keeping around is going to be one who she feels safe enough with to be vulnerable with and not be like that.
Yeah.
So let her be like, she will scare off predatory men. They don't
Mm-hmm.
like that, a woman who can stand up for herself. Let her be that. Let her do that. Let her be sassy. Let her explore that. Don't kill that in her, because, like John Lavelle said, polite women are dead women. And every time, no, I can't give you directions. You don't have a phone? Google it. I don't know. Ask that man over there. What the hell are you doing coming up to a lady at night, asking her that? Like, call them out. You call them out. Call them out every time. What the hell are you asking me that for? You don't think he can answer that question better? Really? you know damn well, like call them out. They hate that. Predators hate that, and I say that because I've been face to face with predators trying to prey constantly. I've had coworkers who had dudes stalking them, this, that, the other. Come sit at that bar. Let's talk. Let's talk, weirdo. What are you doing? Freaking following her to her car at night. I had one girl. She said when I left here, her car followed me all the way home. I'm like, why'd you drive home? She's like, well, I ended up not getting out of my car. I ended up reversing and like driving around again. I'm like, okay. The minute you notice that, you shouldn't have been driving home. You know, like those little things. And I tell like when girls sit in their car, they get in their car and they sit in there to unwind. I'm like, don't do that shit. Don't do that. You need to be aware. You can't just, you know how many times you can just walk up on people and they don't even know you're there? Like they're in their own little world. And it's not just women, it's men too. But I mean, I feel like women, we have a greater responsibility. Your bodies are life bearing. Someone violates you, it can be detrimental to a lot of different aspects. You need to be more on it, if anything. And I'm sorry to say that, yeah, you need to live on the edge. So be cognizant, bro. You can walk up on people all the time. They had no clue you were there because they're not paying attention. People leave their
Yeah.
cars, their key fobs in their car with their purse, their front door open, their garage open. Stop that. Like it's little things that you're just opening yourself up to shit for.
Wow. Now, someone might have said, like early on, is this feminist propaganda? She's telling women to be mean to men. Well, this is why we have the issues that we have today. Men are scared to walk out. I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's be really clear. She was saying present a certain thing and shut down creepy men.
Yeah.
Don't
Oh,
be
no.
creepy, bro. Like, and
Yeah.
coming from a guy who at times has been creepier than I want to admit, and I had to learn the hard way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a training moment for you, like men too. It's like a learning moment. Oh, that
Mm,
didn't work.
yeah.
That's not that behavior doesn't attract a woman of quality.
It's socially unacceptable. It's not going to
Yeah,
work. Yeah.
and if it does work on her, red flag,
Yeah.
red flag all day. Okay.
Oh man, I find this to be fascinating, just because you are so bold and so upfront. And I guess you kind of have to be if you're going to be in law enforcement. If you're going to have to respond to a call, literally tell somebody to like GTFO a location where they're not allowed to be. You know, like to say get out. You're not supposed to be here, buddy. And especially if you, I don't know if you uh, will ever work alone or if you will work with a partner or what your department policy is on responding to situations. But if you have to address a situation just all by yourself, I don't know how tall you are. I don't know any of that.
Five,
Um,
five.
so you're not tremendously tall, right? And to say like, hey, one person with the authority of the state to take a life if I have to, because that's effectively what it is. You can argue with me. I'm open to it. But one person, and there's guys out there who are 6'7", 370 pounds, and a lot of it is muscle. Not all of it, most of it's not, but a lot of it is. To be able to have the attitude and the mindset to say like, hey, big guy, I see what you're trying to do, but what you trying to get into? Let's get out of here. First of all, like that's cool. I respect it. As a dad of two
It's
girls, I wish, I hope that they can have a little bit of that fire. You know what I mean?
they will as long as you guide them in that light of like this is how men should be. They'll have it. They won't take anything less.
But
But
where
it's
did you
funny that
get
you
it?
mentioned that in terms of like being.
No, no, no. Finish that sentence. We'll
Both
get
of my
back to it.
parents are sassy,
I mean, yeah,
but both of them are just sassy.
Islander Indian. Yeah,
Yeah,
sassiest humans in the world.
yeah. But yeah, in terms of like when I find myself on the job, me in my personal realm of life and working as a bartender is very different from me in law enforcement because I've kind of understand there is a power imbalance and
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I make us aware of. I try not to overly intimidate people or make them feel small or like they're you're being forced into something. Like they always taught us
Mm-hmm.
like ask, tell, make, but always ask first.
Right.
Try to get them to that level with you. I love talking, as you can tell. Um, Part of being a bartender was preventing fights a lot of times, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
did de-escalate a lot of situations. and I got to take that experience here. And that's something I've actually kind of enjoyed, is just kind of like talking people out of things. Like it doesn't have to be that bad. We don't have to make this bad. We can just all go home right now, call it a day. And it's funny how I've had to kind of like shift that approach. My interaction with men bigger than me and more powerful than me is more so like, hey, like we don't have to do that. Let's come to the same level here. Let's talk this out like humans. I can tell you're upset. I can tell something's upsetting you. But like let's hear about it. So that's definitely it was like a shift, but also the same, if that makes sense. It was like shifting the
Mm-hmm.
energy sort of, but the intention is still there. It's just kind of weird. It's something that as you were talking, I kind of realized it had happened. How it went from me being like, all right, here I am, like this in your face, to all right, here I am. Let's take this easy. Let's go smooth. Let's have an easy day. I'm not here to
Yeah.
ruin your life, right? Let's not do that.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because if you look at just Google the force continuum, right? One of the first levels on there, or actually level one, is your physical presence, the presence of a uniformed person wearing a badge, wearing a gun, authority of the state behind them, able to completely ruin your day because you didn't want to wear a COVID mask. You know what I mean? Like there are people who literally got carted off to jail because they didn't. It is crazy, right? But to know that you showing up to a place puts people on edge, and to know that you're, deep down, let's say deep down, not that deep down, you're a kind person. You're not trying to mess up people's day. You do have the fire within you to respond if things get crazy, but things aren't crazy yet. So we can just treat everybody with respect. I think that's an interesting dynamic. And there's a lot of people, there's even people who watch this show who have a big problem with cops, who feel that cops have been um, oppressors in some way, or have kind of just historically been a problem. If you look at, Rodney King, guy with a rap sheet a mile long, but did he deserve to get beat up like that? Some would say yes, some would say no. Other people would have some sort of argument of nuance in between. How do you, just as a human being, understand the history of law enforcement, understand where you like to go, and kind of like, and understanding who you are as a person, and really just, how do you sit with that? What do you process that? Do you even think about it? Has it just been like, I'm Indian, doesn't matter?
No, I do, and that's actually an interesting question that I've never been asked. But it is something
Well,
I've
this is
thought about.
CrossFit Conversations.
Yeah, this is perfect. I love it. You're good at this. Have you done this before?
Once.
I can tell. But I think as corny as this is, that be the change you wish to see. And I'm not saying that there's necessarily something to change, because I do think that a lot of times we just get shown the bad, but there are so many positive law enforcement interactions with the community. And if you make it, I think like one thing I just make it a point to, there's people who like they'll see you rolling by and like they just kind of like snark a little bit. Put down your window and say good morning. Morning. How are you? Everything good here? You guys good? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just being as human as possible, and like reminding people that, because I've had people say, oh, like I've had a woman call because she thinks her husband's cheating. Can you guys get into his car? I'm like, no. Why do we can't do that? We're a government agency. Want the government in your business? And she's like, you don't have keys to everyone's car? I'm like, no. And you should never be okay with us doing that. Like reminding them that like, yeah, I'm a government agent, but I also like I'm here to make sure I don't violate your rights, and I want you to be aware of your rights too. Um, I'm really big on that. I will explain the hell out of everything to you and why I had to do something, because I think that you deserve that. I think even if you're not capable of understanding it fully, at least I did my best to make sure you understand my actions and understand what actions you've done to get us here. And if you have questions, I'm willing to answer. But, you know, you have to keep it respectful, and I'll keep it respectful. Like, I'll match your energy, and I'll try to bring you down where I can. Um, But I think in law enforcement, like one thing that appealed to me about it, you have a unique opportunity in that you are the government people do have a bad some people have a bad idea about you, and you can prove them wrong. You can prove them wrong, and you can change somebody's life, um, and you can be that force for the people who can't be a force for themselves. Right, the victims of things. They weren't able to protect themselves or prevent something, but you can take the steps necessary to causing justice. Are there some things that are a double-edged sword? Absolutely, and those things suck really bad. I can talk about this because it's not anything crazy, but let's say a mom who lost a baby, right? Baby passed away. Police come out, can that's a death investigation. That sucks. Telling her, you need to wait right here. We need to figure out what's going on. Why did this healthy baby die? That's not fun. I hate it. Who wouldn't hate that? But that's like the crappy part. And also, like, you have to really talk to her and explain why you have to take these steps. You may be a good mom, but there are some moms who are not good moms and they do bad things. And that's what's taken us to this point. People are willing to listen, some, and some are not. And you'll figure that out pretty quickly. So that's kind of my like thought process through law enforcement and wanting to be in law enforcement and its history and where I stand in that and the future of policing because it's definitely you're under a microscope at all times like every action you do. I mean, you're on body cam, which I don't have a problem with. It's great because if you're doing the right thing, like you should be pretty much covered by that. Most cops actually like it. Um, but I get why people don't like us. I get it. It's not a cool idea. The government sends agents to take your rights away. I get that, 100%. Um, but again, there are things that are sometimes out of our hands in terms of things we have to do. So, and as long as it's not something that's like an absolute violation of your rights, because like I said, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to make sure we don't violate your rights. And if your rights are being violated, that's a problem. But if it's like you committed a crime and there's a victim, I have to, or there could be a victim, you have to properly investigate that.
Wow. You said a whole lot, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Because here's the situation there's a lot of people, including myself, who have had awkward interactions with people who wear badges and carry guns. I've not had just the most dramatic things happen to me, just because, I've been fortunate in that way, because there's people who have been unfortunate and just kind of recognizing that. But even something as simple, a super simple situation happened one time. I'm at a heart hospital and going to go check on my grandma. She's having an operation. And I'm getting out my car and I'm well put together and I'm walking to the lobby and somebody in a golf cart pulls up next to me, not a cop, just a security officer. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" What am I doing here? I'm here to check on my grandma. What you mean? He's like, well, what doctor is she seeing? And just like going, like questioning me, interrogating me. Like, I'm not sagging my pants or doing anything like ultra stereotypical. Not saying that if you sag your pants that you're a criminal, or that you should be suspected of being a criminal. Although I'm sure there's some indicators that people will look at and be like, okay, well, if you're doing these things and you're, profiling is a thing, and for some people it works, and for some people it's a problem, right? Um, but kind of getting back to that just one little small interaction, right? It dawned on me after the fact. I'm like, why was I like interrogated? I'm in a public place. What the heck? You know? And there's people who have had more happen to them. So to hear like that, even the situation that you talked about with the mom, whether it's fictional or real, it sounded pretty real. Um, the idea that you would have to have that, because that's the worst day of somebody's life. People say like, "Oh, you're getting a self defense incident is the worst day of your life." Yeah, but also losing a child, like I have two children, I've never lost any, whether it be miscarriage or death or anything like that. The idea that on the worst day of your life, that there's other people now coming in with the authority of the state, with the cold calculating scalpel and calculator to run the numbers and find somebody to throw in prison for what the baby had went into anaphylactic shock for unknown allergy. I'm not saying that's the situation, but potentially, right? um, and to know that there is a way to handle that situation that doesn't say, lady, get on the ground, knee on the
Yeah.
neck, handcuffs against the asphalt, get in the back of the cruiser. We're going to take you downtown, because we've seen the other side of that. um,
Mhm.
and we have seen the other side of that. And to know that you have it in your heart and in your mind to respond appropriately, that to me, that's cool. And I hope that other people, whether they're hearing this or other cops in just in the world, would hear your heart and be like, yeah, we love the way she does it, we want to do it more like that. I'm not saying that there's not those who do, but
Yeah. I will say,
I can
like,
appreciate that.
I think, like, from what I've observed in terms of who I like, the people I work with, that's the energy they all kind of match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they acknowledge how important it is to be human, and I think maybe that might be something that's kind of changed in policing. Or maybe like
When would
it's
you say
just
that's changed?
I think when I'd say, like, there's a lot of talk about like police suicide and stuff like that, and like mental health, and I think all
Mm-hmm.
that's really tied to mental health. If you can't be human with humans, something's not right.
Yeah.
You've become heavily jaded, and you might need to talk to somebody. I don't think like I don't think behavior like that's normal, to not treat people like people. I think something's wrong, and I think most of your interactions should be very human when it comes to dealing with people.
Yeah.
Again, I am very new. What the heck do I know? Some people might say, and I respect your opinion on that. But in terms of like being a person, like, I hope that no job gets you to the point where you just look at someone like another case. You know,
I
I heard it happens. It does. It does. I get it,
Yeah.
but that's probably, and I've been told by my coworkers that have been on longer. You need to talk to somebody when it gets to that point.
Yeah.
So people on for years can attribute to that.
We had a great conversation with it's the most interesting firecracker of a lady. Like she's such a baller, but she's, oh man, Erica from, ooh, what the heck is her organization called? I gotta find it. I'll find it. But the point being is she does like therapy for cops. But she's not a therapist, but she does the workshops where she helps you guys to manage the stress and figure out where it is in your body and to help release those bad feelings and tensions, and walk you through drills to kind of help you to simulate the stress and work through it and manage it so that you don't snap and black out and end up killing people when introduced with a stress that you're not able to comprehend. And there's a lot to what she does, but yeah, it's called, oh my gosh, I'm looking right at it. Tech mobility. Anyways, yeah. So
That
we did an episode on that like a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that one.
might be what it was. Yeah, that might be where I heard of it then.
Yeah, yeah,
Tech
but she's
mobility. Okay, I'll look more.
tech mobility. Yeah, I think she's cool. Obviously, weird thing is she's not a cop, and so my question is like, why would cops who have been doing this job for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, right? Depending, I guess, how long you can work in the job, why would they listen to somebody who's not one? And listen to the podcast. I think it'll kind of clear some of that up for you or whoever is listening. Um, man, I love what you said earlier about, like, in your training, they asked you, like, hey, if you ever get to a point where you feel like you're not going to run towards the bullets, you should resign. That's
Yeah.
that's important, because I we see a lot of cops, or at least we end up running into those scenarios and hearing about them in the news. The cops who get to a point where they're mentally unfit, and that's a huge accusation, right? But it's the
Mhm.
truth. They become mentally unfit, emotionally unfit, to the point where now they're abusing their spouses. Now they're doing all these things. Now they're, like the numbers are the numbers. Now they're
Mhm.
taking their own lives. Now they're having multiple incidents of abuse towards the public. Like their people don't trust them. Other cops don't trust them, and it's a problem, right? What is it? Do you think? Just coming from new cop perspective, what are they waiting for? Are they in love with the job now, or why can't they do what you said and say like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to resign.
I think I've heard a few different things. One is a high divorce rate in law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement. Can't afford to retire. But also, like, in terms of even like reaching out to help, that wasn't reaching out for help. That wasn't always the culture. It was like always like pretty taboo. Like, oh, you can't cry on scene. You can't, um, you can't be feelingsy. You gotta be pretty stoic and straightforward and stern. And that's not really what we're being taught anymore. And some people would argue that's bad. Some people would say that's better. Um, I think anything that can better your life and provide more longevity and help you feel better as a person and what actions you're taking every day, and you can sleep well with yourself at night, or maybe you can't now because of something you had to do or something that happened, and go get that help you need. That's kind of what's being taught now, whereas that wasn't always the case. It was like kind of seen as weakness, and that's like your preconception of it all. Like, oh, like top cops have to be tough, they have to be, and you have to be all those things, but you're also a person and a human, and you have a family that needs you and relies on you and needs you to be mentally present for that. So get the help you need when you need it. And in terms of like being mentally unfit and like just kind of being burnt out and tired, I think finances might be a big thing for a lot of people. And even like just some people love it. Some people just love the job and they don't want to leave that yet. They don't want to leave that it is what it is kind of thing. They just that's part of their everyday life and they're not ready to leave that yet. Um, but yeah, I think more so like that's a lot more understandable than someone now getting into it and they're just like, yeah, now I'm not running towards those bullets. I'm not saving those kids. Like that's a little more like, all right, you just started. You need to have a little more fire in you about it. This person's flame, on the other hand, may have been going out for a while and they're coming to their end. And as much as, yeah, it may be time for you to, step aside, put the badge away, and explore other aspects of life, a lot of times they never do. And like being a cop was just, that was it. Um, and they didn't have any like other avenues that they ever cared to explore or did explore. It was just go. But you know what though? That's like in any career. People just go to work, go home, go to work, go home, go to work, go home. All right, my 2 hours of vacation. Cool. What else do you do? What do you do on your days off and your free time for yourself? You know, what do you do that lights a fire in you other than getting a paycheck? You know, I think it's just there's a higher level of accountability and responsibility that comes on with the law enforcement career because there's a lot more writing on it. Like you said, you have power instated with you from the state that you're from to affect lethal force if necessary, and that's a high responsibility. So you're kind of expected to perform and be at a certain level to where you can properly bear that responsibility. And that's probably why it's so much more talked about in law enforcement as opposed to like being a lawyer, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
just
man. So if anybody missed it, we did have on screen a a number that you can call if you are in crisis, if you're dealing with something that is what you would consider insurmountable. It was on screen a few seconds ago. So definitely check that out. I don't envy cops. Like just being in my limited position as a licensed by the state of Texas security officer, level 4, level 3. Level 3 is where I get to dress up like you. Level 4 is where I get to dress up like me. And it's it's like more like bodyguard. And that, like the idea, like, hey, we got our radios on, we're working as a team, and if somebody, and it's not always serious stuff, right? Or what you would consider serious in regards to like using guns and having a whole gun battle, and like, okay, so if the guy comes in from there and he's wearing a trench coat and we tell him to stop, and if he keeps going, like, what do we? It's like, no, 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 no. Like most of the time, it's weird stuff like this person's having a domestic situation and the husband is coming to church and he can come to church but he can't interact with her, or we're going to trespass him if you see him on site, like he can't be here, or he can be here but he can't be at the kids wing, or he's actually an offender of the children, and due to the nature of it he can be on premises, but if he tries to go in the kids wing he's done. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just crazy like little nuance stuff, and we got to be on top of that, because the reality is like these are people's children, these are people's wives, these are human beings that we're watching over, that we have the um responsibility, and you have that too, but to a much higher degree, because it's not just for one location, it's for your entire county or your city or whatever it is you're assigned to, right? Or wherever your jurisdiction is, and they can call you in to do something crazy and be like, hey, listen, by the way, that mall that you like to go to, it's not a mall anymore, it's a bathhouse, and it's not water, that's blood. And don't smile, it's not funny. Oh.
It's it's not even true.
Yeah.
That's what the laughter's coming from.
Yeah, we have to keep from crying, and that's the
Yeah.
truth. Um, just the idea that you have to respond to these things, and it's not an option. And if you find yourself not being able to do it, you got to find a new job. And like you
Yeah.
said earlier, that's not so easy for a lot of people, especially for the guys who they did peak in high school and they got out and they became cops, and this is all they know, and they got good at that. Like they got good at doing that, or they went and joined the Marines, and then they really couldn't find purpose after that. And a lot of guys unfortunately find themselves in that spot where they can't get the cool federal job, so they just become a local cop. And not that there's nothing wrong with being a local cop,
I get it.
but
That's
I mean, depends on who you're talking to. I'm not a big fan of the alphabets, you know,
yeah, I know.
but not a fan of the government. But we go from seeing those guys, and now it's like 35 years. I'm keep giving these wild timelines. Now they're 46, still a cop. They've had one shooting incident. They've done these things, and they're running into severe depression because they can't get the eyes of the kid who was bleeding out, who had a squirt gun that looked like a real gun. Like having to make really really tough choices like that. And what do they do? I have nothing but empathy, but also accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like knowing when it's maybe time to ask, right? And that takes a lot out of somebody, I guess. And again, like I'm coming into it with like kind of new eyes, new perspective, but
Right.
like every other
Bright
day,
eyes. The soul is still visible in your eyeballs, and maybe that's part of the problem. Will it get you in a weird situation? Have you ever
yeah.
felt like, okay, this OG cop is telling me like, hey, like my optimism is going to get me in trouble? Have you ever felt that?
Um, no, not as yet. I think maybe like you're kind of like hope for how people could like learn a lesson, especially like juveniles or something like that. I
Mm,
think that maybe is kind of like wears away quickly. You're just like, all right, hope I don't deal with you again, and then you deal with
yeah,
them again.
I've
You're
worked
like,
with some
damn, that
kids.
sucks that this kid is that's what this kid does,
Some
and
people are
okay,
just psychopaths, though. Like,
yeah, people don't have a soul. They were never born with one, and I'm sure of that.
yeah,
Um, but
it's
yeah,
weird.
like it like you were saying though, like there's like so many different levels to it, and again, like I'm coming in with its own you, and I think something that kind of like weighs on you, when it doesn't weigh on me, but something that I think about is every day another officer takes their life
Hmm.
to suicide. And in the we encourage any charities that work with that to they always have a place at the Patriot Games. If it's a place you want to table at, you want to talk about anything that helps with, you know, people not taking their life to their own, even if it's not just cops, military, anybody, average civilian, someone who needs someone to talk to, um, find purpose, and again, that's like the heart of why we do what we do and why we continued the Patriot Games the way we chose to, because that community, you know, to say it changed my life is like an understatement. It changed me. It made me like, I feel like I've stepped into exactly where I need to be, and that's what it did for me, and I can only imagine what it does for others, and we want to keep that going so other people can find that as well. And just like having purpose in your training, because I get to go compete, it's so therapeutic to have purpose, right? Even when so many people are so incontent with their jobs and their schedules and everything being so like a hamster wheel. It's always going to come. And there's just something so nice about having something to yourself to work on for yourself, and the support of your family, because your family sees you doing that and they're so like, oh, this is cool. You're badass. Like, that is so cool. I don't think, unless your family is like ultra like anti-gun and hates everything you're doing, there's no family that's going to be like, oh yeah, don't do that. That's lame. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? No, they're going to be like, this is really cool. This is a cool thing you're doing. This is really impressive. And I just think it's a human activity. It's a human activity. To move, it's a blessing, being able to do these things and just sharing it with people. That's a big thing. You have people there to support you. My first competition, I forgot all my magazines. Everyone came together at who I was competing against, and magazines.
Wow.
And that makes you feel really good, not about yourself, but about people.
About
Because
people.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, after COVID, if you didn't hate human beings for at least a little while, like, you weren't experiencing what COVID was doing to people, what that lockdown, it was taking everyone to the darkest place they possibly can, and you literally saw the worst side of humanity. And I struggled with that a little bit, but I mean, ultimately, like, my view on people now is people are pretty great overall. For the most part, you have that small amount of like bad people, but that's a really small amount. They're just, and it's the loud minority, doing bad things. They're gonna get the attention. But there are such good, awesome people willing to bend over backwards for you and give you the shirt off their back, and you're a complete stranger. There's so much more of that than we think. And that's one big thing about this community that I pitch it to everybody. Oh, you don't know you're not fit? Start working out. You got to do this. You got to try it, because again, communal suffering to me is the best way to build a strong community.
My goodness, I'm tempted to kind of end on that note because it's just so powerful. I was going to ask you, like, hey, how has been being like just the journey as a cop? How has that impacted your, I guess, interactions with and ownership of, and how you view and just kind of where you gear the Hunger Games, Patriot Games, like how has it impacted it? But it almost sounds like you answered that. Is there anything more? You feel like you got it?
I feel like, as a civilian, I'd probably do it the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing, guys. If you aren't already following Nirvana, make sure you are. Make sure you are. Can you tell people how to find you?
Yeah, my Instagram is Vana Shoots, VANASHOOTS. And on the Patriot Game, it's the Patriot_Games. So you can find us there.
Excellent. Wow, this has been so much fun. I'm just gonna throw a bunch of latitudes at you when we get off this stream or podcast or whatever. So just kind of be aware of that. Don't hang up just yet. And guys, thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Obviously you're here. You spent an hour and a half plus with us, and that cannot be discounted. We're not doing an after show today because I screwed up how we're supposed to do it. So hopefully you guys will DM me, text me, email me at info@costlymedia.com and say like, hey, why didn't we do an after show with Vana? Get her back on. Can we please do one? Can we do a part 2? If you want a part 2, let me know in the comments, wherever. I don't care. You just let us know, and we'll make sure we do that, because I feel like she's got a lot to offer and a lot to add, especially when it comes to women's self-defense and the broader conversations. Obviously, she's done a whole lot of stuff. Guys, there is a QR code on the lower left-hand side of the screen if you're watching, and of course, if you're listening on podcasts, it's in the show notes. Not the QR code, but the direct link over to our locals community page, which is the place where you can support the show, or if you just want to follow along, you can follow and watch some exclusive content from the Armed Atlas YouTube channel, which is my firearms content creation side, or bonus chapters, bonus episodes from the CrossFit Conversations podcast. Last week, we had an awesome bonus section where we talked to April about aliens and her time working for Sony Electronics and things like that. So make sure you're there. And of course, as always, until next time, wait, I'm not even going to say it, because I'm gonna let you guys on a secret. We're doing a brand new show. I'm not going to tell you everything, but make sure you tune in next week, because I'm going to share a little bit more about it. Brand new shows coming up. Anyways, until next time, keep it costly.